What is Freemasonry? Before I begin a specific explanation or answer to that question, I want in the back of our minds this quote from Plato to um, just be allowed to exist. Just let it sit there in the back of your mind and see if it in any way um, has meaning to you. Quote, "For this knowledge is not something that can be put into words like other sciences, but after long continued intercourse between teacher and pupil, in joint pursuit of the subject, suddenly, like light flashing forth when a fire is kindled, it is born in the soul, and straightway nourishes itself." That is taken from Plato's seventh letter. All right, what is Masonry? Uh, as I've said before, perhaps too many times at this point, it's a religious academic tradition. Masonry is founded on the Holy Bible, the dialogues of Plato, and the elements of Euclid. In other words, we have a Christian Trinitarian morality veiled in Socratic, or if you like, Platonist philosophical allegory, and is illustrated by Euclidean, but you could also say Pythagorean geometric symbols. When I say things like learn or understand or make references to knowledge and or wisdom, at the core of that is the ancient idea that faith and reason are not combative towards each other. They are a complementary, beautiful binary, and this is more or less a common sense notion to people up until about I think it's the 1300s, when Aristotle comes back into the scene, and he makes some claims to the effect that you really don't need God as a means to understand anything. That's a gross reduction of what he says. Those are just my words. But my point is the underlying assumption and implication in Freemasonry is that it is a place of ancient wisdom, and I don't say that mystically. It is a place where faith and reason are still seen as harmonious, are still seen as a requirement for a man to be a fully developed human being. Masons also often they love to quote the know thyself, know thyself tone, right? And they always use it in the sense of like, who do I want my true self to be? Who am I really? And so on and so forth. And that's not what that statement means at all. It's literally asking you to say, what are you? Are you a rock? Are you a tree? Are you a human being? And if you're a human being, what are the expectations and implications of that? How should a human being act? How should a human being govern? This is what it means to know thyself. You are part of a natural order, and what every man needs to do is to understand that order and his place in it, which does not mean that there is some uh, socially devised hierarchy where some are on top and some no, that's not it at all. And in fact, this idea goes back to Plato, um, and it's explicitly shown in Masonry. Uh, we live in an ordered cosmos, and so our societies should be reflective of that order. But our societies sort of sit between the individual and the cosmos. And Plato explains it as seeing the city like the man. So if you have good men, a good civilization, a good city is naturally going to emerge. And within the emergence of that good society, you're going to be able to order and arrange yourself properly to the cosmos. And herein lies another area that is constantly is just confused and corrupted by people. You know, I hear all too often these quotes about "as above, so below," um, and I heard that at one of those public masses held by the OTO over in Oakland. You know, and I sit down with the members and their lead. I don't remember what their leader was called, but we're just talking about what the OTO is, and of course that phrase comes up, and they go on to explain the usual garbage about how we ourselves are gods, or we are somehow equal to God, and of course this is a just the most idiotic way one could interpret any of what the ancients were saying. I mean, it was said over and over and over again that that a man should never confuse himself for God or a God. Um, this is even part of the basis for the name, the title philosopher. Plato actually writes that um, as men we can seek and we can love wisdom, but only God has it. In the Phaedrus, he says, you know, to call him a wise person, Phaedrus, is too much and only befitting a god, it seems to me. But a lover of wisdom, or a name of this sort, would be more appropriate and harmonious with his nature. So let me circle back and restate that when I talk about learning and understanding and knowledge and wisdom, et cetera, as regards Freemasonry, this is what I'm referring to. That, like I had mentioned elsewhere, you know, with geometry being the basis for philosophy and masonry being synonymous with geometry, there is an inescapable, there is a prerequisite that a man have some comprehension of philosophy before he become a Freemason, because the Mason is seeking out wisdom. This is why the blazing star is in the center of every lodge, because it was the wise men that sought out that star. And when you see a square and compass, you will notice that it forms a pentagon or a pentagram. In a couple of notes here, the pentagram is not a symbol of any kind of evil, and I'm just so tired of seeing the mentally disabled groups like the Satanists or the Wiccans or whatever they want to call themselves, who, I mean, kind of just like the Masons, they're so stupid they don't even understand their own, or rather the origins of the symbols that they fumble with. But the star was a symbol of health. It was the secret symbol of the Pythagoreans, wherein it literally meant health. It was the secret teaching tool of the stonemasons, and you'll go look for yourself, do some study on your own. Go look up like the Cathedral of St. John being built in New York. It still uses that. Um, it still uses that ancient stonemasons technique wherein the pentagon or the star forms sort of the existential core of how the building is constructed. And again, this is why Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is so popular, right? It's connected with this idea of the star as a healing, a symbol of healing. When you see the Masonic square and compass, you know, outside of whatever town you're driving through, that is supposed to indicate that you have men in that community who have a healthy understanding, a balanced understanding of their faith and their reason. Of course, that gets completely obscured, and it never fails that you get some idiot who wants to say that it's like the sign of Solomon. It's not a hexagram. I mean, again, we can use baby logic here. One is a square, right? So it's a 90-degree angle. So already it can't be a hexagram. But one is a square and one is a compass. So again, this is where you need to be or have a little bit of education. Remember that in the ancient architectural guilds, the equilateral triangle and the square angle were the basis for a number of their operative stonemasonry. So, no, it is not the Seal of Solomon. Get that out of your mind. It is a pentagon, and I mean, there's actually a construction of a golden pentagon, which is quite nice. I mean, even people like Albrecht Dürer gave a lot of attention to it. But again, you need to go educate yourself, and you need to get out of the Scottish rites and all that crap. You just need to go learn about the actual Western tradition, which is being or it's attempting to be handed down to you in a Masonic lodge. And this is where I'll try to tie in that little bit on logic, because uh, the fraternity loves to throw in as much garbage as it can, because it really has been a project for the fraternity to obscure, deny, and remove as much of the Christian significance as possible. Again, because it needs to cast a really big sales net, and you can do that by making everything relative. Okay, um, of course they can't completely get rid of it, because then there would just be absolutely no basis for anything they did. But if you understand what Freemasonry is, you know that, I mean, Hiram Abiff is a meta symbol for Jesus Christ. Okay. Um, if you I mean, it's even in the words we use. I was reading, um I was going through my copy of Mackey's encyclopedia again, and he has this whole section on these guys, Jubilo and Jubilum and Jubila. Okay, well, he goes into all this idiocy about where they're from, and the different locations, and he really wants to try to make it sound very scientific, but it's really just a playful way of saying the War of the Jews, right? Bell is the translates from Latin to war, so you have Jew war. Now, why is that important? Well, who wrote the War of the Jews? Oh gosh, Josephus. Does Josephus, does that name come up at all in Masonry? I mean, yeah, it sure does. And not only that, but um, if again we just use context clues in baby logic, and do this, is the work that these guys can't seem to do. Okay, this is it. If you just go translate Juad Bello and Juad Bellum, those are actually very important Catholic terms. Okay, one is the right to war, like the right to wage war, and the other is the sort of the proper behavior, the right way to fight in that war. But instead, what they're going to do is they're going to make up all this idiotic nonsense about how, well, the AOM is really the Aum, and so we're actually studying some ancient Hindi idea here. No, you jackass. That's like saying, well, Plato's seventh letter. Well, what's the seventh letter of the Al? It's G. So, gosh, I guess everything about Freemasonry is about the seventh letter, because the seventh letter is G, and a G hangs up in a Masonic lodge. Brilliant. Okay, we have to be better than this. We have to have more than a eighth grade ability to read and comprehend texts, and we need to have the ability to marshal evidence, all of which comes together and agrees with each other. And so let me circle back to logic here. There's a very important distinction between the validity of an argument and what is called the soundness of an argument. And so if I make a statement such as, all men are mortal, I am a man, therefore I am mortal, that's a valid claim, but it's also a sound claim. So it's valid because I've given you some premises that lead to a conclusion, right? And the fact that those premises do lead to the conclusion without much ambiguity gives it soundness, makes it true. But you compare that with something like, all cats have tails, my dog has a tail, therefore my dog is a cat. That is actually a valid argument, in the sense that I'm giving you premises which should support a conclusion. But of course, it's invalid and it has no soundness because my premises are ridiculous when you think about the conclusion, right? A dog is not a cat, and that argument fails. And so what Masons do is Masons come up with all of these bizarro, stupid, relativistic ideas that can take the form of a valid argument. And 99% of the time, it's because the crap that they want to bring into Masonry is it somehow participates in the Western tradition. We'll take Gnosticism, for example, right? The, the dead end religion that never really was. The fact that there's a letter G in a lodge, and the fact that Gnosticism starts with letter G, I mean, that somehow gives people the impression that these two things are somehow related. But if we educate ourselves, if we read a book or two, right, as fully grown adult males, it really doesn't take too much when you study Gnosticism to learn that the demiurge, right, the creator god from Gnosticism was within the Gnostic context. It's a severely retarded god who can only produce abortive creations. So the next time you're in lodge and you're saying a prayer, I mean, it's a Christian prayer, right? And you're thanking God for his benevolence and for the beautiful creation that he made, think to yourself, could this be a Gnostic environment that I'm in when the God that I'm thanking the creation for, if it's a Gnostic God, is again a severely retarded being who creates nothing but abortive garbage that is doomed to failure. Uh, this is baby logic, okay? This is literally just taking the time to arrange the thoughts in your head such that the premises of what you're thinking have a concise path to your conclusion, and you can examine the premises in relation to the conclusion. So I like things like tarot cards, and I think it's fun to read about the ancient alchemical treatises. Those things have nothing to do with Freemasonry, but they do participate in the Western tradition, right? These are kind of other dead end ideas that occurred throughout within the Christian tradition, at least, but they harken back to the Socratic traditions. You can have interesting, fun discussions on those topics, but at no point do they serve any purpose with regard to the fundamental core ideas of what Freemasonry is. So you can throw all of that in the trash, and it in no way, shape, or form negatively impacts what Freemasonry is. I'll partner this with a story, a personal a story about a former coworker I had, and this guy he was an actual flat earther, okay, and I had always thought that the Flat Earth Society was some sort of satirical society, that maybe these people didn't really believe that, but it was they somehow got a kick out of goading people or just pretending that they believe this. Okay, well, lo and behold, I am absolutely wrong. This guy really believes the Earth is flat, and um, so I sit down and I ask him to explain, and he does. He spends like it must have been 45 minutes going through all of the details, painting this picture for me about, why everybody else is wrong and the earth is flat. And at the end of it, it's all still very ridiculous. But I'm thinking to myself, I have so much more respect for this guy than any Freemason I've ever met. Because even though he is, demonstrably wrong in every way, he at least took the time, he at least had the integrity to present his argument with all the supporting information and to just kind of be vulnerable and say, gosh, I know this is a sort of weird belief, but I believe it. Here's the argument, and here's how I'm going to support it. I've never once heard that from a Mason. Never once. I mean, I'm not, it's not hyperbole when I say that these guys can't even explain it to themselves. And this goes back to the fraternity Freemasonry distinction. The fraternity really is a parasite. And it perfectly fits the statement that it's the successful parasite that doesn't kill its host, right? Well, that's what the Masonic fraternity is, and that's the Masonic fraternity is wherein all of these other derivative degenerate groups come from. All of the Scottish, York, any other appendant body or just irrelevant group that forms itself and then associates itself with Masonry for some reason. It's all garbage. They should all be done away with. In fact, the only way that you could redeem these sort of celebrations of ignorance is if you prospects should start out as 33rd degree Masons, and then that way you can like filter out the slop and stupidity as it works its way through the York and Scottish rites. And then at some point, you should be able to, it's like you're panning for gold. All the crap is going to stick and stay in the rights, and you'll probably get a few, actually qualified, worthy men to seek out entrance into a Masonic lodge. But if that doesn't happen, then the rights and everything else, you need to spine up and have at least the integrity to detach yourself from Masonry, go be your own thing, and stop polluting the Masonic environment with your presence. I tried to make this talk a bit shorter, um, maybe more manageable, more direct in terms of argument. And ultimately, I hope you'll go and read, if you're actually interested in Masonry. I hope you'll go and read my notes and my works in progress via my Substack, because there is just a whole lot more that I wouldn't be able to put into sound bites here for you. And I'm not interested in gaining subscribers. I don't have an interest in whether you like this or not. Um, but my ask is, if you think I'm wrong, tell me, explain it to me, show me where I'm wrong, because I things like the Masonic fraternity, grand lodges, appendant bodies, all of that stuff needs to go. Those are all just those are like cancerous tumors that need to be removed so that the health of Freemasonry can be restored, and so that Freemasonry can properly be observed, that it can properly be handed down. I'll end with a quote from Second Timothy, uh, chapter 3, verses 5 through 7. um, Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses, and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with divers lusts, ever learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of truth.